Alcohol. What is alcohol, anyway?
Alcohol is the root of all evil. Down with King Alcohol.
Have you tasted the delicious flavor of Bacchus sparkling nectar?
Its drinking causes most of the world's misery.
It's the miserable state of the world that causes so much drinking.
Why can't I get some unprejudiced opinions? Some facts?
Facts? For years, alcohol students have experimented, analyzed, and weighed the evidence. So far, this is what we know. Alcoholic beverages can be made from almost any fruit or body tissues. They are gradually oxidized, but for elimination of the kidneys.
But drunkenness, how is that caused?
You see, alcohol is an anesthetic, which is brought to the brain in the bloodstream. Imagine the brain as a complex control center which determines our actions and behavior. When alcohol enters the brain, it interferes with these functions. First to be affected is reasoning power, then inhibition, and memory. Gradually, alcohol affects vision, eventually muscular coordination. If all these faculties are put to sleep, your consciousness goes. Leaving only the automatic processes, such as the control of breathing. If this is overcome, the heart stops.
Then alcohol must be very dangerous.
Very few people die from taking too much alcohol at one time. But there are other dangers. See what I mean?
Why? Why do people drink?
Accepted. Some drink to escape the tensions of everyday life. But for it begins with some deep conflict in his personality. Friends drink for relaxation, but when he drinks, it's to escape conflicts. He begins to look for drinking as often as possible. And when he can't find any other excuse, he sneaks a drink. Eventually, there comes a time when he pulls a blank, forgetting everything he's said or done. Later, when sober, he can remember his own moments. How few drinks he can't. Reproof, resentment. Loses his job. Tries to start again in another town. Doesn't work. He can't begin the day without a drink. And after one drink, he must have more. More and more. More until... lands in prison or the hospital, depending on whether his community understands that he's not a criminal, sick, for whom the only price of break away completely. This is easy. He needs doctors, and those who once were alcoholics themselves, whose understanding comes from experience. Alcoholics Anonymous.
But why do we continue to fight as
Alcohol has been used since the beginning of when it was believed to be life. Brotherhood of crime. A contract signed and sealed in alcohol would not be broken. Birth, betrothal, marriage, all celebrated in the cup. The roots of superstition are deep. Listen.
I'm afraid we can't trust Bob. He won't drink with us.
Look how well he's a real man.
But, Doctor, if I stop drinking, people will think I'm peculiar.
You see, alcohol many people. To some it means release. And some, torture. The problem stands. Will alcohol control us? Or can we control alcohol?
From care and from the pressure of reality. Over 50 million Americans drink more or less regularly with no visible bad effects. A few million react typically and recognizably to alcohol, but still remain strictly occasional drinkers, sometimes victims of a glass too much. But of grave concern to the United States is the growing number of those unlucky problem drinkers, the alcoholics, whose addiction is uncontrolled, compulsive, and in the end destructive.
Come on, Mac.
Huh?
Come on. Time to go home.
Just one more drink.
No more drinks for you. Come on. On your way.
Leave me alone.
Where do you live, Mac?
Take your hands off me.
Oh, you're gonna get tough, are you? You'd better come with me.
Listen, I can take care of myself.
Yeah, that's what all you drunks say. Come on.
Look, officer, I've got to get word to my wife. I've got to get out of here.
Okay, just calm down. That's right, Mrs. Lane. Walnut Street Station House. Ask for Sergeant Garrity.
Yes, I'll be right down. Thank you for calling, Sergeant. Bye.
I told you this would happen. Carousing, irresponsible.
Oh, Mother, stop it, please. There's not a better man on earth when he's sober.
And how often is that? He's just a hopeless drunkard.
What am I going to do? What can any of us do?
That alcoholics are not evildoers whose misdemeanors may be dealt with by punishment, but rather people in the grip of a mysterious inner compulsion to drink, is a concept society has not fully grasped. Yet the world has known for centuries the toll of health, of families, and of careers which drunkenness has taken. By precept, example, and exhortation, generations of temperance crusaders have carried on their work. Notable among them was Father Matthew, an Irish priest, who nearly a century ago converted 700,000 disciples in America alone. Later came America's bone-dry reformers, luridly denouncing the curse of drink, whose efforts were to be crowned in 1919 by the enactment of prohibition.
Neighbors, take a look at your bright-eyed children. Do you know what the liquor industry wants to do to them? They want to feed them that old rot gut and make your fine, strong, healthy boys into sallow-faced drunkards ending up in the electric chair. They want your sweet, innocent girls to take to booze so they can be enticed into honky-tonks by slick-haired vultures who prey on the flower of American womanhood. I say alcohol must go.
Despite national prohibition's failure, such organizations as the Woman's Christian Temperance Union have never stopped their efforts to outlaw liquor.
And I'm happy to report that last year, 183 counties and 614 towns in this country voted themselves completely dry by outlawing all alcoholic liquor.
Fearful that excessive drinking might lead to a return of prohibition, the U.S. liquor interests have made a determined campaign to promote moderation. By an appeal to tavern keepers, the allied liquor industries are urging a curb on drunkenness at a major source.
The first thing to remember in running a decent tavern is don't sell liquor to minors or to drunks. If a fellow's known to be a lush, see to it that he can't get a drink at your place. If there's a man standing up at the bar and you think maybe he's having too much to drink, there's just one rule to follow. When in doubt, don't sell him anything. We believe in moderation, so let's put it into practice.
Meanwhile, in the academic world, many institutions are seeking a sound scientific approach to the problem of alcoholism. One of these is Yale University's School of Alcohol Studies, where Dr. Howard W. Haggard, nationally known physiologist, has been working for years in collaboration with Dr. E.M. Jelinek, famed biometrician. Through exact research and analysis, through physiological experimentation, they and their staff have been trying to find out how alcoholics get that way and what can be done about them. In the school's clinics, alcoholics, referred by social agencies or applying on their own initiative, may find help. The patient's treatment is in 4 phases. A trained interviewer first finds out how sincerely he wants to be cured. Upon this, his chances largely depend. Then the facts of his case are determined, for the treatment varies with the patient's history. Next, a doctor checks to see whether he needs medical treatment. But his physical condition may have less bearing on the problem than his state of mind, and it is the job of the psychiatrist to guide him back to mental health. The 4th phase is an attempt to correct whatever conditions may be wrong at home through interviews with the patient's family. Though its clinical work is necessarily limited, the school exerts a wide influence through regular publication of its findings and through its summer sessions where picked community leaders from all over the country come to learn and go home to apply their knowledge.
In our town, the alcoholics are in as bad shape when they come out of jail as when they go in. Why is that?
Well, that's because detention is not treatment. Sending the alcoholic to jail is based on a scientifically obsolete idea of punishing him, not of curing him.
If a mother drinks while nursing, will the baby develop a taste for alcohol?
If the mother were quite drunk, but still able to nurse, her milk might contain as much as 0.2% of alcohol. That's about as much alcohol as if you were to put 12 drops of vanilla extract in a glass of milk. The answer to the question is no.
Our temperance work is correct in stressing that the use of alcohol leads to disease.
Physical disease is the least important danger from the use of alcohol. The real danger, drunkenness.
But from a New York headquarters, one of the most dramatic jobs in combating alcoholism is being done by the voluntary organization called Alcoholics Anonymous. AA offers help freely to any alcoholic anywhere who is willing to admit his own inability to help himself. And though not a religious organization, its 12-step program calls for belief in some power outside the individual. Direct contact with those for whom help is asked is made only by AA members, who themselves have gone the long road from alcoholism to sobriety.
That may be all right for some people, but not for me. All that pious stuff. I can't go for it.
I couldn't either at first. But believe it or not, Fred, it works. I was in a lot worse shape than you are when Alcoholics Anonymous got hold of me.
Well, anyway, I'm not that badly off. All I need is a little shot now and then. I can stop anytime I really want to.
You can? Then why haven't you stopped? Because you can't and you know it. Fred, you're ruining your whole life.
All right, all right. Maybe I have got to have the stuff. Yes, I've got to. I can't help it. So what?
Okay. Once you admit that, then we can begin to help you, if you'll let us. Do you want to get well?
Well, what would I have to do?
If a new member of AA is in bad enough shape, he begins his treatment in the hospital, where he is built up by rest and vitamin therapy. During this process, old AA members, working in pairs, with the more experienced guiding the less experienced, give him constant encouragement. All through his ordeal, the new member finds strong support in the company of the others. Here is a social group of which he can feel a part. And whatever his problem, others show how they have conquered theirs.
10 years ago, the doctors all gave me up. Said liquor was killing me. Said I didn't have the courage to stop drinking. Well, I didn't, until AA helped me get the courage. I've been dry for 10 years now. Any of you can do as much if you want, because you got 24,000 of us behind you.
I began drinking after an illness. I lost my husband, my job, everything I had. Then I heard about AA. Well, I haven't had a drink since.
Hope blossomed into faith, and the combination of hope and faith led to that eventual miracle which AA provides, sobriety. I don't know whether I'm happy because I don't drink or I don't drink because I'm happy. You figure it out.
AA stands ready to help each and every one of you stop drinking. We did it. We'll help you do it. We'll close the meeting in the usual way. Our Father, who art in heaven,
As part of the therapy, the new member analyzes his personal failings and sets out conscientiously to remedy them. It is never an easy fight, and at times the craving for liquor can be overpowering. But at any time of day or night, another member stands ready to give him the help and sympathy he needs.
Hello? This is Fred. Look, can you come over? I've got to go out and buy a drink. If I don't, I'm going to go crazy. I don't know how much longer I can hold off.
Can you stick it out for a quarter of an hour? 10 or 15 minutes, and I'll be there.
Okay. I was just going out.
Okay, fellow. Take it easy. Sit down now. I know what you're going through. It's the same thing I've been through 100 times. Relax. Just relax. Remember the time I told you about when I was so bad that I couldn't sleep for 2 days?
Each victory over alcohol wins him added confidence, and he acquires additional moral strength by seeking out all those he has wronged and making amends.
So I wanted you to know I'm sorry I tried to sock you. I acted like a heel.
Oh, anyone's apt to take a drink too many.
It's all right. Forget it.
Of those who sincerely ask help, Alcoholics Anonymous claims 75% will recover, some immediately, some after several relapses, a rate of success far above that credited to any other method. But no true alcoholic is ever cured of his inability to handle liquor. As long as he lives, his only security is in never taking a drink.
Listen, Fred, you've been on the wagon long enough. How about just one little quickie?
No, thanks. You see, with me, it wouldn't be just one.
You don't mind if I do you?
Not a bit. But just give me plain ginger ale.
The influence of Alcoholics Anonymous is spreading in the U.S., Great Britain, Canada, and Australia. Already it has rehabilitated over 24,000 men and women, of whom many have become volunteers working to save others. Alcoholics Anonymous and other organizations combating alcoholism are gaining ground, bringing to the public a sense of the true nature of the problem through such spokesmen as the director of the National Committee for Education on Alcoholism, Mrs. Marty Mann.
Alcoholism has too long been a taboo subject, just as tuberculosis used to be 40 years ago. We're trying to teach people the truth, that alcoholism is a disease, and that because it is a disease, it should have no stigma attached to it. Alcoholics should be dealt with like other sick persons, in hospitals and clinics, not in jails. Alcoholism, America's fourth greatest public health problem, can be solved by community action. The National Committee stands ready to help your community plan such action.
Science has not yet fully explained the inner mechanisms of the problem drinker. But today it has been demonstrated through experience that the sympathy and understanding of one alcoholic can help reclaim another, and that in such brotherhood lies many an alcoholic's last, best hope.
You think you're sunk. You think you're through. Well, you're not. You may not be able to help yourself. There are plenty of us to help you, if you really want us to.
Time marches on.
One sunny afternoon a few weeks ago, I was sitting in the backyard of our home in Sand Valley with my youngest son, Johnny. We were happily getting our fishing tackle together for a weekend vacation when my housekeeper called me to the phone. Thinking how fine it would be to get away from the phone, the doctor's phone, which seems to ring incessantly and at unearthly hours, I took the instrument wondering which of my patients wanted me. I can't remember exactly the words I heard. I was so surprised and shocked. But they ran together something like this. The police officer told me that he was holding my son, Bill Jr., at Sunset and Doheny Boulevards until I came over to take him home. He'd been picked up by the officer for reckless driving. Evidently, the boy had been drinking. He had been given the sobriety test and had failed. I told the officer I would be there as quickly as possible. As far as I knew, Bill had never had a drink before. I never asked him not to drink. I didn't think it necessary. I assumed that he had the intelligence to know that alcohol was a deadly poison when used less, and a troublemaker when used at all, no matter how small the quantity. And here he was being held for drinking, driving. It didn't seem possible. Perhaps I'd failed him somewhere in the last 3 years since his mother passed away. I could hardly wait to get to my son and the officer. When I arrived at Sunset and Doheny, the officer, quite an understanding fellow, told me that when he learned from Bill that his father was he decided to phone me and release Bill in custody instead of causing us to go through the unpleasantness at the police station. I soon learned what had happened for my son, the officer. It seems that Bill's drinking was the result of a college fraternity initiation prank. He was given a rather stiff shot of whiskey by his fraternity brothers-to-be, who meant no viciousness by their prank. It was a stunt one of them cooked up, not realizing the serious consequences that could follow. Bill started to get dizzy and to feel violent. His immediate thought was to get home to me as quickly as possible. He got into his car against the warnings of his brothers and tried to drive home. By this time, the alcohol he had consumed had started to act upon the centers of his brain, and his judgment was momentarily seriously affected. His eyes refused to focus. The coordination of his arms and legs went amiss, and he weaved down the boulevard where he was picked up by the police officer. I thanked the officer for his thoughtfulness in handling this matter. I told him that I would arrange to pick up Bill's car as soon as I got him home. I decided that it would be wrong time to admonish Bill for his actions. And feeling that he had learned a lesson the hard way, would not speak of it until the next morning, when we were to leave on our weekend fishing trip. But I did make up my mind to tell both Bill and Johnny all I knew about alcohol while on our vacation. Early the next morning, as we left the house, I told Johnny and Bill that while we were driving along, headed for our cabin in the mountains above Azusa, that it might be interesting for them to hear what I knew about alcohol. I told them that the source of alcohol is in the breaking up or decomposition of sugar. The process is a natural one, but the great quantities of alcohol used by the brewers and distillers can only be obtained by the aid of man. The juice of grapes, left open to the air at a temperature from 45 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit for a period varying from a few hours to several days, are made by extracting starch from vegetables and grain, and then malting them to change the starch to sugar, which is then fermented. The alcoholic content of malt liquors, beer, and ale varies from 3% to 9% by volume. Wine is made by the fermentation of sugar in fruits, as I told you boys when I talked about grapes. The alcoholic content in wine varies from 6 to 23% by volume. The distilling of liquors, that is vaporizing and then condensing, increases alcoholic content. Whiskey is made from wheat, corn, or rye, while gin is made from roots and herbs, which have been treated with alcohol. Rum is made from molasses, and the alcoholic content of distilled liquor varies from 47% to 54% by volume. Bill asked me if it would be less harmful to drink beer or wine, since the alcoholic content is less. I told the boys that all alcoholic beverages were dangerous, and that one bottle of beer might do just as much harm as a shot of whiskey. This may surprise you, but there is just as much alcohol in a bottle of beer or glass of wine as in the average whiskey. Alcohol can be called a poison, since a poison is anything absorbed in the blood, harms, interferes of the organs of the body. To show them how damaging and powerful alcohol is, even when taken in seemingly small amounts, I pointed out that 1 drop of alcohol in 1,000 drops of blood can cause a change in bodily functions. The amount of intoxication or poisoning depends upon the concentration of alcohol in the bloodstream. 2 to 3 drops will cause a person to see double, stagger, forget his responsibilities, and very easily cause him to do something that will end in disaster or near disaster to himself or to others he comes in contact with. A person with 4 to 5 drops per 1,000 drops of blood is dead drunk. When the saturation is beyond 5 drops, the person is dead. Well, several hours later, as we were approaching a beautiful picnic spot in the mountains, Johnny asked me, "Pops, if alcohol, you know, whiskey and beer and wine, is really a poison and causes so much trouble, how come people sell it and others buy and drink it?" Well, I told the boys that alcohol, the making of alcoholic beverages, was making thousands of people tremendously rich. The distillers, the bottlers, the distributors, the tavern and nightclub owners, and indirectly, the vice lords, the operators of gambling places and houses of prostitution, and last but not least, the advertisers of the various whiskeys and beers and wines were getting wealthy touting and proclaiming the absolutely unfounded obnoxious stuff. Now, as far as people drinking alcoholic beverages, well, some drank because they thought it helped them forget their troubles, when all it really did was to leave them with slim purses, broken homes, lost jobs, illness, and even greater worries than they had before starting to drink. Then, too, the advertisers for years had been tricking the public into thinking that men and women of fame and consequence drank, and that to drink was desirable and smart, when all they were doing was telling a pack of lies, all without foundation. Well, after our picnic, we proceeded on our way higher and higher into the mountains. You know, boys, a lot has been written about the damage drinking does. It's so obviously a deadly habit that it's surprising that people just won't take the trouble to find out the harm it does to their bodies. Bill and Johnny interrupted to tell that in both high school and college we're being taught about the evil of alcohol. And I answered that I thought the solution of the alcohol problem lay to a great extent in the spreading of knowledge to the younger generation about the harm drinking does, using the classroom and the school auditorium as verbal and visual battlegrounds. The false information upon an unsuspecting and gullible public by the distillers and their stooges had to be exposed, and the classroom was a fine place to begin. Start with the youth of the country and up from there. The future health of the nation depends on the youth. And I'm not only speaking as a doctor and a father, but as a citizen who loves his country and his fellow men. Well, Bill thought about this for a minute, then turned to me and said, "Dad, you've certainly given me a clear picture of how foolish it is to drink. It seems to me that if those who drink could just hear what you have to say, well, the problem might be on the way to solution. It's not as easy as all that. The knowledge and the facts and the figures for the but to educate the people, to keep pounding the truth home was a long, tough battle. Many organizations feel the same way about the alcohol problem as I do, and are going all out to wipe drink off the face of the earth. Notably, the Woman's Christian Temperance Union, which is working virtually night and day through its hundreds of thousands of members to tell the people the truth about alcohol, the common enemy of the healthy and the sick, the old and the young, the rich and the poor. I told the boys that they could, by starting discussion groups with the students at school, and by asking their teachers to explain to their classes the truth about drinking and the serious problems it causes. Well, we arrived at our cabin just in time to see the sun slip down behind the mountains. Look out there, boys. You know, it seems impossible that anyone would want to drink when this is such a great and wonderful world we live in, with so much to do and so many fine things to see. Well, we'd better turn in so we can get an early breakfast and go after those fish I've been thinking about for the past month. We were up bright and early the next morning, and as soon as we had finished breakfast, we sat on the steps in front of the cabin soaking up the morning sun and readying our tackle for the day's fishing. When I suggested that we forget about our discussion for a while, Bill and Johnny urged me to continue. They could easily listen and fish at the same time. Yes, they seemed eager for knowledge, and I was happy to tell them all I could. After all, a man's son is a pretty grand audience. Considering that I've given them some of the basic facts of alcohol and drinking, I proceeded to go a bit deeper. I tried to forget the somewhat confusing medical terms doctors are apt to heap on patients, and to talk to the boys as simply as I could. I told Bill and Johnny that it was wrong to think of alcoholic beverages as stimulants. Oh, it is true that very small quantities seem to stimulate, but in reality, alcohol is a narcotic and paralyzes biological phenomena. How's that again, Dad? Bill wanted to know. Well, simply, it paralyzes certain normal bodily functions. Alcohol causes the blood pressure to decrease and the vessels become dilated, larger in diameter, that is. The pulse increases and circulation is impaired. With this, the narcotic effect of alcohol affects the body's heat-regulating apparatus, and the body temperature decreases. That's why a person who has been drinking is more likely to freeze than a sober one. And remember this, alcohol never improves the delicate intellectual performance of the brain. We sat there fishing, and suddenly Johnny had a tug on his line, and he pulled in a fine speckled trout. He eyed his catch proudly and said, "Ah, This will be fine eating, Dad. Real brain food. So they say. Hey, Pops, talking about food, is alcohol food? Well, boys, first we had better define food. Simply, food is a substance which builds body tissue. It furnishes heat and energy, and it repairs waste tissue. And of great importance, it can be stored in the body for future use. It's true that alcohol will produce a little heat when first taken, but since it dilates the arteries and veins, the heat is rapidly lost to the skin. Alcohol is not a food. It is a drug that acts upon the nervous system in such a way that it causes depression, and in large quantities, it acts like an anesthetic. Alcohol intoxication begins with the feeling of warmth in the stomach. The drinker's face becomes flushed and red, and he's transferred into a false state of ease and becomes quite talkative. Following immediately is a rapid sequence of incoherent, disconnected thoughts, then inferior association of ideas, and an increasing unsteadiness of movement. Then comes a period when a person's vision crumbles. He's at a loss to distinguish between right and wrong. Crumbling of mental leads to aggressiveness, and the drinker becomes noisy, often wants to fight. And if he keeps on drinking, the tiredness and disturbance of the equilibrium sets in. The pulse becomes fast, but and the skin gets cold, clammy. Oh, I don't mean to frighten you, boys. I'm just telling you in your own kind of language exactly what happens to the drinker in the long run. Next occurs a paralysis of the and vasomotor. The final outcome is death. You mark my words, boys, it's hardy to drink. Relatively speaking, few drinkers drink themselves to death, but all drinkers suffer from one thing or another. It's quite easy to tell the alcohol addict. They have unsteady gait and a rigid stare. Their hands shake, and they have vomiting spells in the morning. They suffer from loss of appetite and swelling of the liver. Their skin becomes discolored, and there's a lessening of potency. Word of advice to keep locked up minds for future use. When the time comes for you to think about marriage, let me caution you to pick a mate who doesn't come from a family where there is history of drinking. Children born of drinking or alcoholic parents suffer both physically and mentally because of unhealthy environment. See that alcohol irritates the delicate cells, causes injury, stops kidneys, blood vessels, and other organs of the body. Oh, it's interesting. Alcohol and athletics don't mix. Any famous athlete will tell you that. In fact, alcohol and any activity of everyday life are simply complicated. They do not mix. The next day, I started. I had a few more things to tell the boys, and when we were underway down the mountainside, I told them about the astronomical cost of drinking. Nearly $9 billion spent for alcohol last year, more than 1.5 times the number of dollars spent on all education. Many more billions spent by local and state government to fight and suppress crime and vice, brought about both directly and indirectly by drinking. Now, some people talk about the money taken in taxing alcoholics, but they don't talk about the greater sums spent by the same agents to collect tax money, covering the cost of damages to people who drink. The cost of police enforcement is staggering. Remember that crime can be alcohol. And think of the thousands of people killed and injured by drinking drivers. No matter how much you try to rationalize, it's dirty business. I'm supposed to be an understanding and kind man, a tolerant person in every doctor worked up a good practice, and should be sensible enough to care for his patients and his family. Maybe not think too much of such issues. But it literally makes my blood boil when I think what fools we are to allow taverns or dram shops or saloons or whatever you choose to call them in this highly civilized country of ours. They're a threat to our people, all of us, male and female, the young and the old, even those who haven't learned to talk. In reality, all where any of legal age can go in and buy a drink which can cause untold illness, vice, and death. We have the sense of potent medicine poisons well out of reach in our medicine cabinets. And we doctors write countless prescriptions that cannot be refilled without a new prescription. The mothers and fathers who are so solicitous of the well-being of the youngsters in the family to put medicines out of reach certainly should do something about an industry that virtually peddles misery and death on nearly every street corner in our country. And to top it all off, the industry that sells the stuff has the gall to advertise it as though it were something tremendously desirable, a cure-all. With question, alcohol is our public enemy number one. When we arrived at home, I mentioned to the boys that they didn't have much of a fishing trip. Well, Bill looked up and smiled and said, "The fish can wait, Dad. What you've been telling Johnny and me is more important. In fact, I can hardly wait to get back to school tomorrow to pass on the information that you've given us to the fellows in my class. You know, Dad, if we sons would listen to fathers like you and repeat what we've learned to others, well, I'll bet we could do a lot to help fight the alcohol problem. Yes, it's up to young men like Bill to help educate others, to tell about the great damage drink has done and is doing, to pass the word along truthfully and simply, not only to young men, but also to women. So won't you help stop the manufacture and sale of alcoholic beverages in this country, and thus remove the taverns and saloons, and decrease vice and crime, and so help to keep our lives happy by telling others what you have done as a and as an American, owe to yourself and to your fellow men.
This weaving world of shattering sounds will be recognized at once by him who says in all frankness, "I am an alcoholic." Grandfather would have said dipsomaniac or inebriate in deepest contempt, never imagining that medicine one day would insist on classifying as an invalid, usually chronic, the type A case of Philip Brown. Philip Brown came wearing sodden rags, his 10th enforced visit to the alcoholic ward. These he wore instead of shoes, without socks. A quick toboggan ride, Philip Brown's. Only a week ago, he started out cleanly shaven and hopeful in his last good suit to mend his stricken fortunes and redeem for his wife an oft-broken but sacred vow. It was a crisp day, and there was hope in the heart of Philip Brown. He believed in his promise. He wore it like a shield, blazoned with the inscription, "No beer, no liquor, no light wine." Very simple. All I have to do is don't. Not an ounce. Not an ounce. Not a drop. Not a sniff. Now, this is not a temperance lecture or a tract on abstinence. This story has no application whatever to other urbane, cheerful souls in this cafe who can take a drink or not take a drink. A Gallup poll would prove that of all the hundreds visiting this bar today, only one is qualified to play a role in this film. Just Philip Brown, looking much like the others, nonchalant and calm, sipping a quiet snifter all alone. A significant word, alone. The interesting thing about Brown, the lamentable one, is this. He planned not to be here. He didn't want to be here. To him, this tavern's haunted. haunted by a most appreciative insurance executive who made him general manager of an old line firm and reluctantly fired him 3 times in a year before making it final and absolute.